Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Silvestri, and I'll be your host today. Welcome to XCMeducate Busy Season Series, Year-End Cleanup Preparing for Busy Season. During this session, David Patesh, Project Manager of Consulting, will walk through features available to help get your site cleaned up and ready for the upcoming busy season. The webinar will then open up for Q&A. Before I hand it over to David, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about the webinar. Wolters Kluwer is registered with NASBA as a sponsor of continuing professional education on the National Registry of CPE sponsors. As such, we are excited to offer one CPE credit for today's webinar. A total of 3 polls will be conducted throughout this presentation, and you will need to participate in all 3 polls in order to receive CPE credit. Your CPE certificate will be sent to the email you used to register for this webinar within 72 hours after the session. If you do not receive your certificate within those 72 hours, please email us at xcmclientservices@xcmsolutions.com. Please note, CPE is not available when viewing the on-demand version of this webinar. If you experience difficulty answering the polling questions, please type your answer in the questions pane of the control panel, and we will ensure you receive credit for those questions. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions to David today by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to all of your questions during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. A recording of the session will be sent to you 24 hours after the session ends. It comes from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. The recording and the presentation will also be available on our Help Center later this week. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome David Patesh.
Great, thank you, Amy. And again, my name is David Patesh, and I work with XCM in the Consulting Services Division. I typically run implementations as well as support our clients as far as whatever their needs may be. So what we're going to do today is really just go through the various components of XCM when we're looking at kind of a year-end busy season cleanup. So we want to make sure that your site is ready to go as far as the actual site, right? So you have all different areas of the application itself, and think of it as a workflow management tool. Think about your various default settings. So we're going to dive deep into the value of site maintenance, and really by keeping your XCM database up to date, your clients and task information is going to provide you with the most up to the minute information, right? So ensuring that all settings and defaults throughout your site, looking at the current year's information will allow faster movement, fewer clicks throughout the site, and in turn, XCM is going to hopefully save you and your firm and your staff valuable time. So if we think about any of the time that was possibly lost in the previous seasons, where the site data was, let's say, inaccurate, or at the time it took like extra time to actually find the data outside of XCM, whether that be, for example, a client phone number may have changed, or your default shipping methods, maybe they've been adjusted. If you have any clients, let's say, that are inactive, so we want to consider those as well. Also certain default information as far as populating your reporting. So all the time that's wasted during your busiest month could have been reduced by updating your site during your slow season. So that really is the goal of today, is to kind of tee up to ensure that you are ready to go with everything that's current client related data, ensuring that your site's reflecting current year defaults, ensure fewer clicks throughout the application, as well as just saving time investigating client contact or task related issues. So here we have just a listing, and I'm actually we'll work through the slides, if you will, and I have pretty much a slide on each one of these areas of the application. So again, think about like your default settings, filing methods we looked at, all the group data, we'll think about client information. We'll touch on practice management as far as the application if you do have that integration. I'll just kind of highlight areas where you might look at things a little bit differently there, as well as think about your various users, marking them as inactive. There's certain data maybe in the points section that you don't need anymore. You can delete that information or purge it. We'll think about rolling over tasks, as well as creating tasks. So I am going to launch a polling question, and we'll take just about 60 seconds for that poll to be launched. Once I launch it, we'll give about 60 seconds. And this first question here is just, does your firm utilize all sections of the routing sheet? And I'll talk more about that, but I'm going to go ahead and launch that here. So again, take a moment, let us know. All right, so the poll is in progress and we're just collecting responses. All right, take another 15 seconds. You got a handful of folks that we're still waiting on. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close out the polling question. And again, thank you for sending your response. And it looks like we have about 62% that say no, and about 38% that say yes. So we'll talk a little bit about the value of updating that information as far as the routing sheet. Okay, perfect. So jumping into the next area, again, this manage routing sheet, we'll look at custom grid settings, as well as manage categories, which is an area that you can, if you let our support team know, they'll reach out to your consultant and have them set up a time where you can actually update certain information around categories. So, we'll take, again, a look at that piece of it. So we're just going to look over here. So with this area here, we're looking at the firm settings first. And so within the managed firm settings and default utility, you should confirm that you have the most up-to-date assembly, shipping, and default category as far as in your period end date. So I am going to use my mouse on this just to kind of show you certain areas as I talk through, because I know, there's a lot of information on the site. So here is where you're going to want to go in again into the utilities section, indicated by the gear icon, manage settings and defaults. So you do want to go ahead and make sure this is up to date at 2020, the year 2020. That'll allow you to, for your task page, as well as your search and reporting, to kind of default to the 2020 period end date. With that, another area we'll look at is this firm fiscal year. 2020 is kind of, if you were to scroll up, it's on top. So if you hold control and you click through the years, typically what we would recommend is current year, prior year, and next year. That way, when you're doing a quick search, so you're actually searching for your client to return any active tasks that you're working on, it'll give you potentially all of the, all the tasks that you may need, whether it's a final year return, an amended return, so on and so forth. And again, this here where you might want to update any shipping information. If you do know, again, the assembly page settings, if you have types of copy, PDF, or whatever might be in the dropdown. So again, all of this is just allowing the system to have certain default settings that's going to ultimately reduce the clicks for you, so you can kind of very easily, again, look within the site to find exactly what you need. So the next area that we'll look at is the default task filing method. And within the managed task type utility, we want to ensure that all default filing methods are current, right? So with that, we're thinking about, and again, I'm going to kind of I'm going to circle the areas here. So this filing type, we do want to go ahead and make sure that the default, so this is e-file, let's just say for your 1040s, you can update it to paper or none. So on and so forth. So if you, give me one, sorry about that, I went ahead. So again, if you do have that information on the filing type, you want to make sure that that's selected to make it the most up to date. If you are using an auto rollover that's been happening throughout the year, your task will automatically reflect this change. This here is also, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but this is your auto rollover feature, this particular area. And I'll talk through how to actually make that update in a later slide. Okay, so Looking at the next area is your client or entity data. So we can make certain bulk updates, and again, I'll talk through that. So your managed client utility allows users to add or edit client information, and that's again individually or in bulk. Keeping your client database updated is important when creating tasks on the fly and when tracking client information. So if your firm is currently integrated with practice management application, be sure to verify fields that are synced across the platform. And again, you can always reach out to our support team, and we'll let you know which fields are mapped if you're unaware of that information. You do want to make sure you're only maintaining those particular fields in practice management, and the ones that are not integrated with that sync, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that in XCM. So again, you can speak. Typically, your internal web administrator should have this type of information. But that's just something to think about. Do you have your practice management integration set up? Is there a synchronization with that? Which fields are coming through? You want to make sure that you're not updating those mapped fields in XCM, because it'll be overridden by what you have in practice management. And again, that only pertains to folks that are leveraging that particular integration. So if any existing clients need their primary task type or fiscal year end populated, this can be updated individually on the client details page or in bulk to update. And so in order to actually update this in bulk, if you are familiar with this particular area within the utilities, the managed clients utility, you can actually, typically you can, let's say, add a client, or what you're actually able to do is when you search for your clients, the results that you see below, A&A Co, ABC Daycare, you can actually select multiple clients or entities, individuals or entities, and actually make the change on this particular page. And again, you can apply that in bulk across the way. So you don't have to click into the client singularly, make the change if it is something that would apply to multiple clients as well. So you just apply you select the clients, you populate the filters on the right side of the page, and then make sure you select apply changes to apply any of the new or edit information to the client details. All right, so it's also essential to include your client's email addresses and phone numbers. This information is very important because it pulls directly into the issues and points pages of the task, as well as on the electronic routing sheet. So when a question's posted, for example, in your point section within that question's like classification, you can quickly either call the client or send them a quick email. So again, that's a time-saving measure. By grabbing that email, throwing it on the client profile, you're able to now click one button and email directly out of the point section to your client. And all you have to do is basically by selecting create email, XCM will not only pre-populate the questions you wish to send, but also the email address, right? So you're saving time it might take to look up a particular client's email. And lastly, you should review your active client list by running the client details report that's in the administrative report section. And that, although you cannot delete clients in XCM, you can mark them as inactive. So pre-busy season, you should review your active client list in XCM and make sure to mark any clients that have left the firm as inactive by marking the client as inactive, which would prevent any current tasks associated with the client from rolling over or recurring. And you're not going to lose any of the inactive client task information. So XCM is going to maintain the history of those tasks unless you were to go ahead and delete and purge those tasks, the active tasks on that particular client. Okay, so this here is just thinking about certain groups and within your client entity data here, you're going to want to make sure again that all these various pieces of information are populated. And again, just thinking about ensuring that you have the most up-to-date information on your clients. And if you're newly creating tasks and you're creating against your client or entity database, you want to make sure the staffing is up to date as well. So this next area is your group data. So the managed group utility is used to create and manage client groups. And to add a new group, click on Add Group. And clients can be listed in multiple groups at the same time. So if you wish to add additional clients to an existing group, just search and select the group you would like to add the user, and then click directly on the group's name to highlight it. Then you click Edit. And then within the Edit Group page, select choose client to select additional clients to add to that group. So in order to view group details in bulk, you can run the group details report. So if your firm is currently, again, integrated with practice management application, be sure, again, to verify what those fields that are synced across the platform are, just so that you want to only maintain the fields that are not integrated within that sync, right? So it's just thinking, well, I would recommend, grabbing that list of which fields are synced over, which really just means, what are being pre-populated, what information is being fed over from practice management, and then which areas of XCM on the client profile are not. And that's just a matter of, okay, we can distinguish, well, let's update the clients, the information that's not a math field in XCM, and anything that is, you update that in practice management. So there shouldn't be any duplication of efforts there. And the next thing we're going to look at, and again, I'm trying to think of this kind of from a logical standpoint of going through the site, thinking of the various utilities, again, looking at the clients, looking at your groupings, various things like that. So now let's think about, let's say if you have, just given the current environment, you may have had staffing changes, you may have onboarded folks, or possibly folks you have to mark them as inactive, but they may still be sitting on active tasks. I know it's a pretty common question. Hey, we have, this particular team member, they're no longer with us, they're on a particular task. How do we clear that out, right? So this is it. This is the utility that will allow you to do that, again, in bulk. So within the managed staffing assignment utility, you should update any staffing for any terminated or promoted staff. So when tasks begin to move through your workflow, they are pushed to the appropriate users or team members there, right? Your first step is to search based on the client database or active task to narrow down your search on the client's task that requires staffing changes. So after you've chosen how you want to find and replace, select the person that you want to replace by selecting the choose button to locate the users. There are additional filters that you can use to utilize and to help narrow down your results. And then once all the necessary fields have been populated, select search to bring up your search results. Once you have your search results, select the person to replace the current staff with. So you're going to select the responsibility and select the client and tasks you want to apply these changes to. The replace staff assignment only, and then ignore replace from. That search will replace staffing regardless of who was in the position beforehand. So the apply changes to both the client entity database and the active task. Those options will make the staffing changes on both that client entity database and the active task. If your firm, again, I'm going to kind of continue to try and highlight this area. This is another area we're thinking, okay, I'm updating the staffing information. We've moved away from the client profile as far as, the utility. However, this area, when you're going ahead and applying a change to both the client entity database and the active task, if again, that's a synced field, your staffing information, it's being fed over from practice management. And when you do make those changes, you again just want to make sure that those areas, you don't want to update it in you don't want to update an XCM, update the client entity database, and not update it in practice management. So you do want to make sure you're doing that again across the various platforms there. Thinking about users, so that's another area that we're going to be looking at. So now, you have your manage user utility. And this is going to allow your firm to update user settings and disable, again, any terminated employees. In pre-busy season, it's critical. It's very important to ensure that all users and details are up to date to avoid any delay in processing. So that, again, the user detail report will show you the current user rights assigned to each user as well as other details. So after reviewing the report, go into the manage user utility to update any user rights and then add additional details to the user profile. If you are using the XCM scheduler module, which has our RAS resource allocator, or the SB or SBT scheduled by employee or scheduled by task, we highly recommend tagging the profile of the users as much as you can. We have all different areas, and it will really help to narrow down, if you are looking to search and filter down by particular users, by department, by niche, expertise, all of that information, that'll be very helpful to go ahead and tag those users. And again, you just want to make sure that as far as user rights, folks have the appropriate access to the site. And then you also are able to obviously go in and disable any users that may have left the firm recently. This area here, if we're thinking about, okay, well, I want to create maybe new user right groupings, or I want to apply them across the board to a handful of users. So there's an additional layer, another utility that is the bulk, it's the bulk manage user groups and user rights. And it will allow you to bulk apply your user rights and your user settings to multiple users at the same time. So your first step is to create the user right groups. And this also is going to allow you to standardize your user rights into groups, right? So XCM is a lot about standardization as far as your processes and how you're, managing your firm. And so any new employees in XCM, it will basically just result in a much faster setup. If we already have a grouping, you can, do it by level, and then all this, just like that, you can go ahead and, apply the staff group user rights. You don't have to go and, cherry pick your way through the various user rights. So once you do have that set up, your user rights can go ahead and you can bulk apply them to all of your employees. And this utility list, it's going to list your various the steps for you. So you can kind of just click through. You'll bring over any of the user rights from the pick list on the leftmost side into your selection, create that group with your group name. And then you'll be able to click again that bulk add user to the user groups. And then the next page will allow you to bulk apply. I should note, you can also always go ahead and edit those user right groups. The next thing we'll look at is the delete task and purge data. So within the delete task and purge data utility, you have the ability to delete unnecessary tasks and permanently remove specific information from the task in bulk. And that's, for example, or such as we should even say is shipping, assembly, and review points. If you really don't need to retain those year over year, you can absolutely clear those out. So by purging and deleting your unneeded information in the task, your XCM database is going to be, it will be better organized and up to date for your upcoming busy season. You can only delete tasks in the status of no info in, NLC, no longer task to be deleted, and recurring. So when purging task information, tasks must be in the status of completed. And within the utility, search for the tasks you would like to purge or delete, then select them and click either delete tasks and purge data in the dark purple bar. So really what we would recommend is that, any task you're looking to delete or purge the data from that you're moving at a particular status can make it a lot easier for you to go ahead and search for that information. Once you do, the top left, it's a little bit hidden, but what's in orange on the purple ribbon, that's where you're going to go ahead and click. So those are actually buttons. It brings up this secondary window of data purge, and you're able to go and select the following fields, of course, that you want to permanently remove from the database. And you click apply, and then you're good to go from there. Okay, so now let's think about, our users. Hopefully that's up to date. Staffing information is up to date. Clients are up to date. Any default settings within the site. So again, like your period end dates and then manage settings and defaults. Okay, so we're kind of, writing the narrative here of as we're moving along, well, what's next? We want to think about creating tasks, right? And there's a slew of different ways to do this. And your firm might utilize various features, if you will, within XCM, which we'll talk about. So the create new task utility, that allows you to create tasks for any new clients that you previously added. Right, so if you did go ahead and create a whole bunch of new clients, you can actually go ahead and bulk create tasks against them. So you don't have to do them singularly by clicking the Add Task button. That's from your My View. So if you're utilizing the quick search to show all clients, that there's also ways to look at this where it's going to allow you to say, I want to see all the clients that do not have the task created for their primary task type. For a specific year, originating location, so on and so forth. And first search for the client you would like to create a task by using the filters. Once you have your results, click on Create Task to create your tasks in bulk. Okay, so this next area here is thinking about rollover tasks, right? I'm gonna jump back into this slide, but before we jump into the next slide here, I just want to run one more, our second out of three polling questions, and that's going to just, I'm just wondering if your firm utilizes the auto rollover feature. So I'm going to go ahead and again launch that. Please do take a minute. We'll do about 60 seconds, and this is launched. So I'm distributing the poll, and it's in progress. take another just about half a minute to collect. All right, I'm gonna close it down in just about 5 seconds. And it looks like as of right now, we have about 73% say that said yes, and about 27% that said no. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that out. And we're just gonna go ahead and look at this slide over here, which is talking about your rollover task utility. So this particular slide is likely only relevant to about a third of the folks on the line today. But for anybody who's interested in learning more about, the various features, we do have a rollover task utility if you're not using auto rollover. And it's going to allow you to bulk roll over your tasks from the prior year. So as far as best practices, we would recommend including assembly, shipping, knowledge, and checklists when rolling over tasks. However, of course, we recognize, every firm is different. So it's important to discuss with your firm what information should be carried forward with the task. It's also imperative to never roll over a task that recurs. So like for example, if you have estimates on a recurrence pattern or any type of a monthly payroll task on a recurrence pattern, you don't want to roll those forward. Within this utility, you can also utilize the quick search option, which will show all tasks which have not been rolled over from the previous year to for example, let's say from 2019 to 2020 with a specific location, HQ, or if you have a name of your office. This option is going to ensure that you do not miss any tasks to be rolled over. Similar to the other utilities, you're going to first, of course, search for the tasks you'd like to roll over by using the search filters on top. Then select the task or task and click on rollover task, which is going to bring up that secondary window. And this is going to provide you, so that pop-up window is going to provide you with the information that you like to select and carry forward. So as you see, you can select assembly, shipping, all of that good stuff, and then click on rollover. So for folks that are using auto rollover, that's great. It's definitely a feature that we typically do recommend. One thing that's super important is this utility, if you have not turned on auto rollover and are looking to do so, we just want to make sure that maybe you reach out to support first, because we'll walk you through it initially. One area where if you look on the pop-up window that says auto rollover, on the top rightmost side it says annually. It actually defaults in the system to daily. So I'm sure you can all kind of get the idea there. It's very important that if you are turning that on and making changes, that you specifically change that to annually, if that is, of course, what you're trying to do. And again, if you have any questions about setting up auto rollover, please do reach out to support. The rollover utility is going to allow you to manually select the tasks you would like to carry forward, versus the auto rollover feature. It's going to automatically roll over your tasks and its deliverables the moment they're moved to the completed status, right? So think about manual rollover is you're going ahead, you're selecting the tasks and you're rolling them forward in bulk through the through the rollover utility, versus in the managed task type utility, we're saying on the task type level for any client or entity that has a particular task type, we're turning on an auto rollover feature. And this should generally save you time. And this, again, you don't want to have auto rollover turned on as far as that function if you have any recurrences associated with them. So it's not really suggested to use auto rollover for daily, monthly, quarterly frequency task types. Although you can turn on the auto rollover feature in bulk, you can only edit them on an individual basis, okay? And so I'll kind of walk you through this, but again, take notes, but again, reach out to support if you're going to do this, and you're not comfortable going through the utility. Definitely just reach out and we'll walk you through that. Our team is very good at kind of making sure you're doing that as smoothly as possible. So in order to turn on the auto rollover feature, you need to select the managed task type utility. So that's what you're seeing here. Once in the utility, your first step is select what task type you would like to turn on the auto rollover feature for. So to make your selection, check the box to the right of the task type code twice, okay? This is going to clear out all check boxes to the left of the task types. So before you maybe even move to that step, I would almost just take a screenshot to make sure you know which task types are turned on. Okay, so that's a critical piece there. This will clear all again of those check boxes on the leftmost side, which is why I'm mentioning that. It's as if it's clearing it out. Now you can select the task type you want to turn the auto rollover feature on for. Once they're selected, check the box to the left, click on auto rollover, and then select what information you'd like to carry forward. And that's the same. This pop-up window is a similar pop-up window you would see in the rollover task utility if you're doing that manually. Once they're all selected, check the box, and then from there, of course, you're going to select all the information carried forward. And again, make sure that that's that top right. And I'm just going to highlight that. This piece here, this drop-down menu, it again defaults to daily. So you don't want to turn an auto rollover on for daily because you'll have too many tasks. So especially when they're getting completed. So you want to make sure that that's on annual. And then you're going to decide whether you want to pull staffing from the previous task or from your client entity database. Your final step is to select apply, and then you'll now see an orange on or edit, which is what we do see here. For example, like 1041, you see that on or edit, and that'll link to the task auto rollover setting. All right, so jumping to the next area here, I have our last polling question for today. It's just asking if you folks are using custom fields, and really on this, it's I think I meant to write the custom grid. So I want to see if you're using your custom grid settings, and we'll talk about that. So I'm going to launch the poll, answer the polling question. I'm going to launch that now. It'll take about 60 seconds, and again, that's as your firm utilize your custom grid settings, and we'll talk about what that is. We'll give another 30 seconds or so. All right, we're going to go ahead and close that out. It looks like it's a pretty even split, so we'll talk about that. The next slide that we'll look at is going to talk about the routing sheet, but we will get to the custom grid settings that we'll be looking at. So before we get into that custom grid, I just want to look again at your routing sheet. So when you click on a client or entity, when you're on your My View or in your search results, anything in blue is a hyperlink, right? And with that, depending on the category of the task type, you're able to customize your routing sheet or control sheet. Okay, so it's just a matter of, do you need, let's say, the engagement section of the routing sheet turned on for a tax task? On the A&A side, do they need it for, let's say, e-filing, things like that? So if you're not utilizing checklists, maybe you can turn that section off. Or, custom fields, if you're not utilizing those, you can also turn those off as well, so on and so forth. So there's about, you can go by category. You can select your category, and then you're just going to go ahead and select just the areas that you want to have reflective on the routing sheet, which is kind of your, bookmark section that's on the leftmost side of that routing sheet. For folks that are, just want to kind of see another area, so this here is just a little bit more detail on that. So you're just, of course, you're going to go ahead and actually select which view. You can also save to all categories. So that's another area to think about, that if you are just making those changes, you want to do that across the board, you can do that. And then if you say, hey, shoot, I don't know what I turned on or I did, I can then go ahead and restore defaults as well. So it's really just thinking about, what relevant information do you have that pertain to your particular task within a category. Your categories, think of them by department. So I have another kind of a visual representation here where it's just looking across the various categories, how it might differ, right? So I'll leave this up for just a moment here. You can kind of take a look before we jump to the next section, which is going to be that custom grid settings. All right. So from here, and hey, feel free, if you want to take any, we will obviously circulate this slide, but if you do want to take any screenshots on your computer, if you're at home or in front of your, in front of your desk, feel free to grab screenshots as we're going of any of these slides. So this is that custom grid setting that I was mentioning. So this is really just thinking about, when you're on your My View page or even your My Checklist or in your search results, you have column headers, right? You have a grid. Your clients, applying the account number, all the different pieces of that, your type of task, period end date, maybe your anticipated delivery date, so on and so forth. So it's just a matter of thinking, what columns do we want to make available on a global level across the site for everybody to be able to then go ahead and view on their My View. Now, just note that there is a separate setting on the user profile, for the user. So if I log in individually, into the site, there's also what we call the show hide icon. I can still turn off certain columns if I don't need them, but you do want to get a general consensus across the board, across the department saying, which columns do we want to have turned on? There are a ton of available columns that will give you just the information that you need. Again, you can see on the top left, the My View, search, and admin checklist. You can customize those different pieces. And then you're also able to rearrange the columns from this particular utility. And if you only want to do this once here, where you do it for your My View on the rightmost side, you can click Save for My View and Search. You don't have to do it for one at a time if it's going to be the same. All right. So now thinking about just there's a few other areas. Okay, so it could be that we've looked at, all your client information, your users, updated staffing, thinking about rollovers on your tasks. So now another thing might be, well, our process maybe changed just a little bit, or there's certain statuses that we don't need anymore. And we're just thinking about, well, for any of these areas, you can always create update your workflow mapping, update any of your checklists and sign-offs. For folks that have been with us for quite some time, you know that we didn't always have the ability to apply checklists to all of your active tasks, but now we do, which is pretty great. So that way you can go ahead, update the checklist in your Manage Customized Checklist utility, and then update your defaults, and then push those out again to all active tasks, so on and so forth. And sign-offs you can do as well, but sign-offs we were always able to push out to active tasks. So again, just think about your process, any of within your workflow, any of the statuses, if you have associated checklist items with those statuses, as well as sign-offs, you can make updates there. And again, feel free to reach out to support or your dedicated consultant on your account, and we can walk you through those processes as far as, maybe some best practices or what we've seen other firms of a similar size, or if we, try to understand the profile of your company, we can kind of align you. You can even, potentially talk to other XCM firms. Okay, so the next area that we're looking at is all of this information. Hey, this is great. What about for next year? I mean, sure, we want to get CPEs. Do I want to sit and spend an hour learning all these different pieces? Well, sure, but one nice takeaway that you can do in theory is, and we do recommend this, and again, we can help you set this up. But think about XCM. As far as it's housing all your client profile, data there, your tasks, processing, all the various movement of that task. So at the end of the day, if there is a task and there's a process around it, XCM can generally handle that. So we have seen, and we do recommend, and some of our most successful firms actually have this task type set up. Instead of your 1040s and 1041s, we have created an XCM maintenance task type. Okay, so by keeping your XCM database up to date, your client and task information will provide you with the most up-to-the-minute information, right? And so with that, we actually would go ahead, create this task type. You can call it, site cleanup, whatever you'd like. And then within the firm policy, you can, however you like to do it, you can design and kind of communicate internally the creation of certain checklists. So they might be more customized to your firm versus, certain best practice that we might see. And that's going to ensure that your cleanup is accurate. So below I have an example of a checklist page that's designed for a site cleanup project. And this project then should be set, hey, with a recurrence pattern. You can do it, hey, if you want, you can do it on a monthly, quarterly, or biannual schedule to ensure the task is created timely and directed to the correct user for maintenance, right? So we set up a XCM maintenance or a year-end or a site cleanup, create your checklist items. You can have it as a very basic, you can build in a workflow, very basic. I mean, it can go no info in, quarterly cleanup to completed. Quarterly cleanup that status, you'll have your associated checklist items. Again, that's where you kind of want to talk to your firm internally to find which areas we can help you, on the XCM feature set side of things, we can, that's kind of what the goal is today. And again, you'll have access to this information. But if you do want to kind of stay on top of that, definitely go ahead and consider trying this and let us know what you think. Report back to us and give us your feedback if you think it works, if it's great. If you have any suggestions for us, we're always open to hearing more. So if you have suggested checklists, for example, that you might use that you've seen, if it's successful year over year, certainly let us know. We want to hear from you. Okay, so how do we even go about setting that up? So within your managed task type utility, and again, that's the utility that we were looking at previously, just looking at that auto rollover or their default filing method on your task types. So with that, you would go ahead into the managed task type utility, and then you would create your task type. You can create the task type code as XCM for maintenance. Your task name, as you see, could be XCM maintenance. We do recommend putting it in the other category, just so it doesn't muddy up any of your reporting across any other departments. Filing type, you can list as none typically, so that way you can just select the task and very, swiftly move it to completed. And then with that, again, you don't have to have that auto rollover feature turned on. You can set up a recurring task. Once you set up your task type, you would then go ahead into the checklist utility. And this here is where you can go ahead and add your checklist detail. And again, that will be associated with maybe just the one status, and then you'd mark them as done. Maybe it's not NA, maybe it's not applicable for this year, you can mark it as NA on your checklist items, or again, you can kind of push that out to active tasks. I'll just give everyone kind of a minute to look at some of these different ideas. Okay, so then from there, what you're able to do is go ahead, go on your My View, click on Add Task, click the Add Task button. You would search for your client, which can be XCM if you'd like to list it as such. You can look for your task type, which is that XCM maintenance task type. Put your period end date, right? So you can set that 12/31/2020 if you wanted to look at it like that, or if it's a quarterly basis, you can, set up your initial one, and then I'll show you how to create or apply a recurrence pattern against this. And then you can do, save and next, or save and open, save and done. Save and next, I'm not sure you would really have any deliverables on that per se. However, save and open and save and done, that'll allow you to open up that routing sheet, you can see your checklists, and so on and so forth. So once you have the task created, you would then be able to go ahead and apply a recurrence pattern against that. I have it as monthly here, but again, you can set it as yearly, you can set it as quarterly, or any even special option you can have put in a handful of different dates, so on and so forth. So I hope that kind of makes sense, that we're thinking about, okay, let's go ahead, create a task type, create your checklists around that, and then that way year over year, you'll know exactly what's done and what's completed, and then you can kind of save some time, get some time back into your day. The other thing, as long as we're looking at recurring tasks, is just to think about separately from the XCM maintenance task type idea. We do want to just make sure that any recurrence patterns that you have set, if you no longer need to have that recurrence pattern recurring, if you will, you do want to make sure that you actually go ahead and cancel the recurrence. So I'm just going to highlight that. You would be able to go into the recurring task utility, search for your specific task, which you toggle to the edit tasks, edit recurrence patterns, search for them, you can click cancel, and then click apply. And then again, this is like another area where, maybe you want to update some information for that recurrence pattern, and you want to have the recurring task be pushed to a particular user if you're looking to edit those recurring tasks. So there's a report, the recurring task report, we would recommend looking at that. And then you can get an idea of which tasks you have on recurrence pattern, and then you'll be able to make updates accordingly. Okay, so we're gonna just kind of do like a quick recap here. What I have on the right in the blue are the actual utilities to look at while we were kind of going through. So just gonna go through again to think about, manage firm settings, right? So that's anything that's gonna be default in your site as far as when you're adding or creating a task, when you're running a report, when you are looking at your quick search, the assembly, shipping section, all of that is to reduce the number of clicks and just make it as simple as possible to be able to just, get things out the door, right? Make sure that you're kind of just moving things along as swiftly as possible. That's also, again, you want to look at that task filing method. That's in the manage task type utility. You just want to verify and update. If you do go ahead and update that area on your filing type in the manage task type utility, you still do want to go ahead and possibly on your task types, if they've previously rolled, let's say, you can update that information in bulk. Again, feel free to reach out to support on the detail on that, but really what you're able to do is select up to 50 tasks in the same category. In the assembly, shipping, and e-files section, if you will, you can go ahead in the assembly section and actually update that information, just drag down to update everything to, let's say, e-file, paper, or otherwise. Your client data, that's just really ensuring that you don't want to duplicate efforts. So if you have an integration across the practice management platform and XCM, just know which ones are what we consider map fields, which just means, which fields are having information sync over to them, which would override what you're updating in XCM if you updated them in XCM. There's also within manage settings and default utility, there's a little bit separate, but you're able to go ahead and actually select that you're not able to edit any mapped fields. So if you do want to put a control in place, there is the ability to do that. So just take note of that. If you're not sure where to find that, again, feel free to reach out to us, but just know that is a capability of XCM. Thinking about staffing assignments, lots of changes this year, our environment, things are very, different. So as far as that goes, people are working in different places, doing different things. You just want to make sure that your staffing assignments are up to date. Users, right? Similarly, anyone who's inactive, anyone who's newly onboarded, just make sure that they have, the appropriate user rights. You don't want folks coming, hey, I can't access the site, or I only see this and I need to have access to X, Y, and Z. So you just want to make sure that everyone's kind of set up appropriately. And again, that you can very simply standardize that process through your manage user groups and user rights. And then thinking about, right, so any of your tasks that you have in the site, any of those active tasks, we just want to also think about, maybe I don't need that information in my site anymore. I don't need to house it in my site. I'm not looking to, kind of muddy anything up. I just want only what I need. So delete tasks and purge data allows you to clear out certain, let's say points again or other information. Thinking about creating new tasks, that's really for primarily, if you've been with us for a little bit or even over a year, you do during the implementation, we typically do a task creation process, which is what we do, kind of front load the tasks, right? We set them up. And then again, that's where those rollover features turn on. Either you have auto rollover or you'll do a manual rollover, depending if you have like kind of different offices, so if you're a multi-office location and you're doing manual rollover, maybe do it office by office, reduce, kind of the overall potential negative impact of rolling all your tasks at once, maybe defer on the office level, have the partner go through or whomever, a staff member, and run through and make sure you need those tasks to actually roll forward. And then the create new task utility is for any of those newly created clients, which again, when you create them, you have an option to either create one task type against a multitude of different clients, or you can go ahead and look to the pieces of the client profile, which is the default or primary task type, fiscal year end, so on and so forth, and you can leverage that so you can actually create the tasks against that information that will create different task types for different clients, individuals, entities, whatever it might be. And then we've already mentioned this, but those rollover tasks. So again, on the rightmost side in the blue, maybe you do want to take a screenshot. We will circulate this. There will be a recording after this session that will be sent out. And so you have, again, just your manage settings defaults utility, your manage task type utility, manage clients and entities, group utilities. So those are all within your utilities. And if you're wondering, hey, this is cool, but I don't see any of these, well, then that's probably your user rights. And you just want to make sure you're talking to your XCM champion, firm administrator, whomever it is that kind of controls that side of the house to just make sure that you have the appropriate access that you believe that you need. So without further ado, we're just going to save a few minutes here for questions. And absolutely do feel free, and if you already have, we do appreciate you submitting any questions. And let us know if you have any questions. So we'll take about next couple of minutes for that. I'll stay on the line. If you don't have any questions, again, we just, we'll circulate all this information. Obviously, we appreciate your time, of course. We hope everyone stays happy and healthy and all of that good stuff. So I'm going to leave this open for questions, and then Amy, just kicking it back over to you. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we close out for the day?
Yeah, David, actually, we do have some questions in the question box that I just wanted to read out to you and see if you could answer for the people that are still on the phone.
Okay.
So the first question we have here is, can I bulk add a task for multiple clients at once using the create task option? So they're adding a task called tax organizer for all the 1040 clients, and they're wondering if this is an easier, faster way to do it.
Yep, and so the answer is yes. You can definitely look at the create new task utility, and within that, you would go ahead and search for your clients, and maybe you would search for that particular, let's say, 1040 task type. Once you get the results of all of those clients, you would then be able to go ahead and select the one task type of tax organizer, and then bulk create those tasks against those clients. So does that hope that answers the question? The answer is absolutely yes. You can create new tasks in bulk, and that would be a good idea to use that utility.
Perfect. The next question is the manage routing sheet a firm-wide feature, or can each person customize what they want to see?
Sure. Thank you, Amy. So it is a firm-wide feature. So the manage routing sheet, it's going to be by category, so almost like by department. And that's global. So if we think about a good amount of the utilities, for the most part, those are going to be firm-wide settings. And then when you're on your My View, that's where you have the ability to make other kind of tweaks to what you're seeing. But the routing sheet would be firm-wide, and then department or category specific.
Great. And then we have another one about the custom grid. Is there a way to customize the grid for each category or department?
At the moment, we do not have the ability to update the grid by category. And if we think about it, you may see all different categories within your My View or within the search results. So that's something we could potentially do, that if you were, maybe an enhancement request of sorts, is if you're searching by category, can we customize the search results? But at the moment, it's really just across the board, just for your search, admin checklist, and your My View.
Great. Another one on the checklist items. For the checklist, are we able to customize the response and use terms other than none, done, done, not done, or NA?
Sure. So you could definitely, and that's at the moment, that drop-down menu, you're not able to update, which is an excellent question. XCM is highly configurable, so sometimes it's hard to know, hey, which drop-down menus can we update versus which ones we can't. So that's definitely a great question. But you can absolutely put a comment or leave a note in the checklist section if there's additional information that you'd like to provide.
Yeah, and I think, David, just to add on to that,
Sure.
For some of these features that aren't functioning that way for questions, if it's something that your firm feels they would like to use, you can always submit those into our enhancements. It's enhancements@xcmsolutions.com, and the team there can take a look at them and, maybe sometime in the future work through some of the enhancements that we get from our customers.
Oh, perfect.
So both our tax and A&A departments use XCM. In the managed task type utility, should only the task types show in that category, and the same with the A&A task types? Meaning, when I change the task category to FS, I would only see the A&A task types. So I think they're talking about in the utility where you assign them, David, if you're on tax, thinking tasks and tasks is kind of confusing.
Yeah.
If you have the category tax selected, you see everything. If you go to financial, I believe you see everything. So I think the question is, are they supposed to, or should they only be seeing the ones for that category?
Yeah, so you're supposed to. So that managed task type utility, that is going to show you all of the task types that you've ever had in the site, whatever might be turned on as far as selected, and then you're going to see for all of the different categories in that same kind of table. Really, is what that is.
Great. Another question we have here is, are we able to set up auto emails that can be sent to clients without having portal?
Depends which area of the section you're looking at. We do have an auto e-file email, which is pretty helpful if the task is sitting in an e-file status awaiting consent form. You can actually set it up so it automatically sends an email to your client, letting them know that you're waiting on their consent to actually come back to you. So that we do have that feature available. And I would, Amy, is there anything else you would add to that?
No, I think those are, those two, and then your point sections are really the only things I believe that go out to the customers for the clients for auto email.
Yeah, exactly. And the e-file is automatic, so that's a nice feature that I'm sure, if you're thinking about who's taking time to actually go ahead and email your clients, hey, we're waiting on that type of information, then that would definitely be a time-saving measure. So again, reach out to our support team if you're looking to learn more about that.
Okay, if we have rolled over for the new year, but realized we shouldn't have brought over the items on the right side, we checked all. If we roll over again, will it duplicate or do like a write over?
I would say for this one, contact your dedicated consultant. If you don't know who that is, reach out to support and they'll let you know. There are a few ways to kind of troubleshoot. XCM at the end of the day is not going to allow you to duplicate tasks. But if you did roll over and you carried over certain information that you didn't believe you should, we do have certain ways of clearing out those tasks. I mean, this again, you would want to work with your consultant on this, but maybe you'll move all the tasks to NLC, go ahead, delete the task, hard delete, and then re-roll. That's typically kind of the fastest way to do it, but it really depends. Do you have multiple offices? What category is it? A&A, where you bring engagement information over? Do you need that information? So I would reach out to your consultant to just discuss that and just kind of get a good idea of what would be best in your specific use case in this scenario.
Okay, and then we have time for just maybe one more question here. How do I delete tasks from task types utility that I no longer use?
Right, so you can't delete the tasks. And again, that's really just allowing XCM to maintain a history of task information. But you just want to uncheck the box as far as task types that you don't want to have turned on. Does that make sense, Amy?
Yes. And then I think we just have one more question here, David, so let's just go ahead with it. Can you describe the differences between the various custom field data types?
It's a good question. I mean, at the moment, you have the ability to customize, and those fields are for you. So if there's an area in XCM that you say, hey, I believe I should be able to track this information, but I don't see where, again, let us know and we can maybe point you to it. But if not, those custom fields, you're able to put some type of text, right? For the most part, there are other features that we have as far as XCM with certain like APIs. You can ask us about certain e-file integration information, but with that, those custom fields, it's either a text box. So if you're doing auto engagements, maybe seasonality, and you want to put in your seasons there, or if you want on the tax side, put maybe an invoice number, something along those lines. And then otherwise, you have the ability to put a date. So that would bring up a little calendar. And then separately, you do have the ability to create a drop-down menu now. So that's probably new within the last year or two. But you can create a drop-down menu where you can customize the specific piece of information. So it gives you a little bit of like greater control from the input there, and then the reporting is going to be a little bit more standardized. And you do have the ability to turn on within that custom field. You can turn on recurring and rollover. So if you want to have that included, to have the custom field rolled over. And otherwise, you can have it also where it's displayed or no longer displayed. So if it's like you don't need that custom field anymore, you should be able to toggle off to turn that field off if you no longer need it.
Great, thanks. And with that, we are at just about 1 minute left. So if there are any other questions that we did not get to, we will certainly follow up with you after this. Again, if you have any questions for as you're going through and doing your cleanup maintenance, David, this was a great presentation on what they can do to get ready for this upcoming busy season. Please feel free to reach out to support at xcmsolutions.com. You can also create a ticket for support through the new help center, so feel free to use that as well. The recording will be sent out to everyone tomorrow from GoToWebinars, and by the end of this week, we will have uploaded the recording along with a PDF copy of David's presentation for everyone to utilize on our help center. So look for that towards the end of this week. So with that, we're going to let everybody get back to work. We're going to end the broadcast and hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon. David, thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone on the line for your time. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, guys.